गोपीजन वल्लभ गिरिवरदारी जय
गोपीजन वल्लभा गिरिवरदारी
यशोदनन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जन
यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जन
यशोदनन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जन
यशोदानन्दन व्रज जनरञ्जन मोतीरावनचारी यमुनतीरावनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी
श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु
जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर शिवासादि भक्तवृंद
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada.
Jai Om Vishnupada Paramahamsa Bhattacharya Sutara Shri Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta.
No, you are good. Prabhu. Your video is of. Hare Krishna devotees, are you able to hear us?
I'm able to hear you.
I can hear you, Prabhu, very well, but from Prabhuji, the voice is going down and coming back, and
Okay,
sometimes.
Prabhu just joined. Did you join, Prabhu?
No, not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Not yet. Who's joining now?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay. I don't know, cut off. Let's see. Okay. Tisa, you want to mute yours? Yeah. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye Nasta Prashu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistakir. Okay, so we'll discuss from Canto 3, Status Quo, Chapter 1, Questions by Vidura, Text 13. But before we do Text 13, just to give you a understanding or overview, you can say. So at this point, Parikshit Maharaj is interested to know about Vidura and how he approaches Maitreya Rishi. And so he wanted to know what made Vidura go back into pilgrimage, and how did he meet Maitreya Rishi. And so he was curious about that. And he asked Sukadev Goswami about how those two great personalities actually met and discussed. So then, of course, this whole thing goes back and forth between Sukadeva Goswami, Parikshit Maharaj, and sometimes goes back to Sutta Goswami and the sages of Naimisharana forest. So, therefore, when Sukadeva Goswami is asked by Parikshit Maharaj, then Sukadeva Goswami is very pleased, and he then says that Dhritarashtra, who was very impious because he wants his sons to take the kingdom, he also tells Parikshit Maharaj how the Pandavas were being burned under the blessings of Dhritarashtra, actually. He wanted his sons to kill his nephews, yeah. And then also in the court, when Dushasana brought Draupadi and they tried to undress her, the king, Dhritarashtra, he also didn't do anything. Dhritarashtra just kept quiet. Okay? And then Sukadeva Goswami says and explains how Yudhishthira Maharaj has no enemies. And still, he wanted to prove, not really prove, he acts on the platform of truthfulness. So when he was told to go to the forest with his brothers, he accepted that. And after that, when he came back, he asked for the kingdom. Dhritarashtra actually refused to give the kingdom back. And then what happened was the Pandavas got together with Krishna, and they decided that Krishna can go and talk to the Kauravas so that they can give the kingdom back. And actually the Pandavas didn't even want the kingdom. They just asked for 5 villages. And so Krishna went and he spoke on behalf of the Pandavas, and still they didn't take Krishna seriously, both Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra. And in fact, Duryodhana thought Krishna was just a cowherd boy who's in the disguise of a powerful king. And so he wanted his soldiers to actually arrest him also. So then, at that time, Dhritarashtra was thinking, what to do? Is this a good thing or is it bad? He has doubts, and he loves his brother Vidura. So he invites Vidura, and he wanted to consult him because, in political circles, they have some ministers to help. And Vidura is considered to be a very expert minister. And when Vidura was asked that, Vidura again explains how Yudhishthira is very exalted and he has no enemies. And therefore, by not returning his kingdom, Dhritarashtra was committing an offense. Otherwise, his sons will be killed by Bhima, who's waiting to strike them like a snake, he tells him. And he also makes a point that Lord Krishna has accepted the Pandavas as his own family, very close with them, and therefore he's warning Dhritarashtra that you should be very careful because the Supreme Lord is on the other side. So you should try to do the right thing. And then we come to this particular verse, today's verse. Okay. I will chant, and then after that, I guess you guys can chant with me. Sa esha dosha purusha duraste grihan pravisto yamapatya matya Pushnasi Krishna vimuko gatashris Tyajasva saivam kula kaushalaya.
Tyajasva kula kaushalaya.
Okay, so I'll just go straight to the translation. Translation purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So Vidura is speaking. You are maintaining offense personified. Duryodhana as your infallible son, but he is envious of Lord Krishna. And because you are thus maintaining a non-devotee of Krishna, you are devoid of all auspicious qualities. Relieve yourself of this ill fortune as soon as possible and do good to the whole family. Purport. A good son is called apatya, one who does not allow his father to fall down. The son can protect the father's soul when the father is dead by offering sacrifices to please the Supreme Lord Vishnu. The system is still prevalent in India. After the death of his father, a son goes to offer sacrifices at the lotus feet of Vishnu at Gaya, and thus delivers the father's soul if the father is fallen. But if the son is already an enemy of Vishnu, how in such an inimical mood can he offer sacrifice onto Lord Vishnu's lotus feet? Lord Krishna is directly the personality of Godhead, Vishnu, and Duryodhana was inimical to him. He would therefore be unable to protect his father, Dhritarashtra, after his death. He himself was to fall down because of his faithlessness towards Vishnu. How then could he protect his father? Vidura advised Dhritarashtra to get rid of such an unworthy son as Duryodhana as soon as possible, if he was at all anxious to see to the good of his family. According to the moral instructions of Chanakya Pandit, what is the use of a son who is neither a learned man nor a devotee of the Lord? If a son is not a devotee of the Supreme Lord, he is just like blind eyes, a source of trouble. A physician may sometimes advise the extrication of such useless eyes from their sockets so that one can be relieved of the constant trouble. Duryodhana was exactly like blind, troubling eyes. He would be a source of great trouble to the family of Dhritarashtra as foreseen by Vidura. Vidura, therefore, rightly advised his eldest brother to get rid of this source of trouble. Dhritarashtra was wrongly maintaining such personified offense under the mistaken impression that Duryodhana was a good son, able to liberate his father. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Sanmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Mugam Garati Vachilum Bangum Lange Tegrim Yatkipatamam Mande Shri Gurum Dinataran Paramanandamaya Shri Chaitanya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodito Gododiya Pushpanto Chitra Sando Tamomuda. So in this part of the, you can say it is also part of the Mahabharata, but this is in the Bhagavatam. So Vidura again is one of the important figures in the history of Mahabharata. He was conceived by Vyasadeva in the womb of a maidservant, because his mother, or rather when Vyasadeva wanted to come, at that time Ambika, the queen Ambika, she refused to conceive a child with Vyasadeva, and so she put her maidservant there. And it is said that Vidura was born of the maidservant, and he is actually an incarnation of Yamaraj. Yamaraj was cursed by Manduka Muni in his... what had happened was, Manduka Muni curses him to become a Sudra. What had happened was previously Manduka Muni was once in his hermitage, doing his meditation and worship. At that time, a group of thieves, they came and they hid in his hermitage. So when the state police came, Prabhupada says, they came, they searched all the, and they found them in Manduka Muni's hermitage. And so they arrested everyone there, including Manduka Muni. So they took them to the prison. After that, the magistrate there imposed the rule that everyone should be put to death. Now, in those days, the way they put them to death, or in this case, they would put them in a trishula thing. It's a kind of plant that is very pointed. It has a pointed shape, and the person is placed with, so the sharp point goes through the anus and kills them like that. So Manduka Muni was placed like that, and he had to suffer that, and the sharp point was going in. At that time, the news came to the king, and when the king found out who was being put in he immediately ran there and stopped that execution, and he begged the Muni's pardon, and the Muni accepted that as his karma. And then he was thinking, how does it happen? Why did it happen? So immediately he went to the Lord of Death, Yamaraja's abode, and then he confronted Yamaraj and said, I have never done anything wrong in my life, why was I punished like this? And then what was the reason for it? So then Yamaraj tells the Muni that when he was a little boy, he used a very sharp straw, and he pierced an ant, a little ant. So he pierced the ant, and the ant was suffering so much. And for that reason, he was put into such a difficulty. So the Muni wasn't happy with that reasoning. He said, this is not proper, because little children are innocent and they don't know sometimes what they are doing. So you cannot punish a child with such a heavy punishment. And he said, this is not acceptable. You don't understand how to punish. So he cursed Yamaraj. He said, now you need to take birth as a Shudra, because you don't know what is right and wrong. And so Yamaraj therefore became Vidura, because he was born of the maidservant, he became the Shudra brother of Dhritarashtra and Pandu. So that's the reason. And even though he was born, you can say, even though he was born a Shudra, he was very intelligent, extremely intelligent. And he was also trained by Bhishma Dev with Dhritarashtra and Pandu, and he was trained in everything. And of course, Vidura married also, but he also married another person just like him, a Shudra, a Shudrani. And he did not inherit any properties of his father, because he's not, when the son is not of the queen, he cannot inherit the property. So, but still, Dhritarashtra loved his brother, so he gave him a property to stay and take care of it. And Vidura was also very attached to his older brother, and he tried to also guide his brother in the righteous path. Actually, during this particular war of Kurukshetra, Vidura would many times ask his brother Dhritarashtra to stop this injustice that he was doing to the Pandavas. But Duryodhana would always interfere. And he'll tell him, that you are actually partial to the Pandavas. You are not our well-wisher. And he says, because of that, he actually gets, what he does, he says a very nasty word, saying that you are a kept woman's son, to Vidura. His own uncle, Duryodhana, curses him, and he tells him, without us, you are nothing. So Vidura gets offended, which will happen after a few verses from here. You'll see that. And then Vidura just leaves the entire place. So Vidura was born of a maidservant. The father was the king, and that's how it is. But still, Dhritarashtra loved him very much because he was his well-wisher, and he was very much liked. Both of them liked each other. And so on every occasion, Dhritarashtra would consult him. He was very an expert also. Now, we may wonder, how is this possible? But in diplomacy, in politics, this is how it is. They always have some consultants, some ministers who understand the politics and or diplomacy, and so they always get them to give them counsel. So that was the politics. Prabhupada also says that. But the problem was, even though Vidura was a very intelligent and kind-hearted person, Dhritarashtra was blind. But not only was he blind, he was also spiritually blind. And so he couldn't see things according to religious principles. He saw it through his own desires. He felt that I could not have this throne because I was blind. And he was thinking, actually, the kingdom belongs to me, Dhritarashtra. He said, I couldn't get it. I was blind. That's okay. But the kingdom actually belongs to me. All right. So anyway, my brother occupied the throne for now. That's okay. But he's dead and gone. And so why his sons should be the king and not my sons? So this is against religious principles. He wasn't thinking along the proper lines. He was thinking politically. So many times in history you see how in political situation, when the king, sometimes the kings are poisoned by the ministers and the whole family is killed, and then the ministers will become the king. So in the same way here you can see Dhritarashtra was trying very hard how to kill the Pandavas from the very beginning, even though he was their uncle. And at all times, Vidura would stop him and restrict him and restrain him. And Dhritarashtra would agree with his brother whenever the counsel was good. So he was kind of easily influenced. But remember, he has this deep desire for having the kingdom. And so whenever he gets to hear about becoming the king and the kingdom, he goes in that direction. So at this moment, he wasn't sure what was happening because his son Duryodhana wanted to fight. So he called on Vidura, what is to be done? And he told Vidura everything. And Vidura told him, no, you cannot do this. You should not fight. And so in this case, as they are discussing, and you can see, he's telling in this particular verse, he's saying, your son is not apatya. He's not a good son. A good son is supposed to elevate the father. In general, the sons are called putra, right? Most of you know that. Putra means one who delivers the father from hellish planet. But his point is this, Duryodhana is not a good son. Mostly when you have children in the Vedic culture, the sons are trained in such a way that they follow religious principles and they try to help the father attain a higher status of consciousness, or at least make sure that they do not go to hellish planets like that. When the father is dead, generally they do, what is that, Pinda? Pinda? Yeah, they do Pinda. And that's the thing that is mentioned here. Gaya, they go to Gaya. And this practice is quite common in India. I think outside of India, those who follow, they follow this, but otherwise, mostly people have forgotten this thing. So after the death of his father, the son will go to this holy place and then they will do some offering and so on. But for devotees, Hare Krishna devotees, we don't need to particularly go to Gaya, right? You can do the process at home. You can invite some Brahmin devotees, do some yagna, and then offer prasadam to your forefathers, including your own father. And if you are a good devotee, you are going to automatically deliver your father. Problem here is that from the beginning, Duryodhana, the son of Dhritarashtra, he wasn't interested in Vishnu himself. Actually, he was so offensive to Lord Krishna. He's very inimical. So Prabhupada therefore says, if you are very inimical, how can you worship the Supreme Lord? If you hate the Supreme Lord, how can you worship? And if that's the case, how can the Lord himself bless you? So a son who is inimical to Vishnu cannot therefore deliver his father. Because the Lord himself would say, I don't want to have anything to this person. And so therefore, Vidura here is saying, why are you maintaining this envious person? Why are you maintaining this non-devotee of Krishna? Interestingly, you can see Dhritarashtra, even though he has been told by his brother that Krishna is actually the personality of Godhead, Dhritarashtra could not change his views. It's very unfortunate, but he cannot change his views because he's thinking, my son's desire and my desire is very important. So when we are practicing Krishna consciousness, we are going to meet many such difficult decisions to make, right? Sometimes our desires are not in parallel with the Lord's desires. Sometimes our desires will not be as same as our spiritual master's desire. Sometimes our desires will not be the same as our own children's desires. So all these things must be considered very carefully. In all circumstances, our desires must give us Krishna consciousness. Our desires should not take us away from Krishna. So bearing that in mind, if you look at this particular verse itself, you can see the son is anti-Krishna. You can say he's anti-Christ in the Christian context. He's anti-Christ, but or he in this case he is anti-Krishna, and therefore the father shouldn't be supporting one who does not accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Why we are saying that is, in this situation, everyone there believes in God. They are all pious living entities who worship Krishna, or Vishnu in that case, and therefore they should have accepted the fact that Duryodhana was wrong. But you can see now Dhritarashtra is so attached to his son Duryodhana that even religious principles did not matter to him. It did not matter. He was thinking that he could do anything he wants and the Lord will not interfere with him. He's not even thinking they will have dire circumstances. And so he is willing to fall down for his son or for his own desires to be fulfilled. So therefore, Vidura's advice is not taken easily by Dhritarashtra. The question then is, if Duryodhana wasn't there, will Dhritarashtra listen to Vidura? So later on, you'll find, much later, after the war, Vidura comes back again, and he does preach to his brother Dhritarashtra. And at that time, finally, Dhritarashtra will accept his brother's advice, and then he will go back to the forest, take vanaprastha, and finally give up his body in the forest, meditating on the Supreme. Actually, he cannot meditate on the form of the Lord. He meditates on the impersonal aspect of the Lord because of his problem here. So when we are inimical to Krishna, and even though we can change our hearts, we may not be able to get the Lord's blessings to go back to Vaikuntha. We may have to go to Brahma Jyoti first, or Brahman, and then maybe come back again, and then after being sufficiently purified and repenting, then one can take pure devotional service. So in the same way, if we have a child, a son, for example, actually in the 9th canto, Ravana's own father says, my son is not a putra. he says. He says he is not Putra. He is Mutra, he says. Mutra means urine. Because Putra means sons come from the same genital, but then one is supposed to be elevated, Putra. The other one, Mutra, is a waste product of the body. So Ravana's father say, he is not my son, he is Mutra, he is the waste product of my body. So if the sons, and if we have children and so on, and if they are not God conscious or Krishna conscious, then such living entities is a waste to bring into this world, which is what generally in the 5th canto, King Rishabhadev, he tells his sons that one shouldn't have a child if that child is not going to be trained as a devotee of Lord Krishna. Because the whole goal of life is to, when we all take birth, is so that we can actually appreciate the purpose in life, and that is to learn how to love God. And if you do not know how to love God, then the consequence is that we are going to suffer in this material world unnecessarily. Not only that, we become inimical to the Lord. And not only that, in the 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, you find that the Lord will cast those people who are inimical towards him into lower and lower species. And they will suffer for many, many lifetimes before they are given a human birth again. So in the same way here, Vidura is highlighting to the Dhritarashtra that you have now created an ill fortune. Try to come to a good fortune. And the only way you can do that is to get rid of this terrible son that you have. It is also said in the Mahabharata, when Duryodhana was born, he didn't cry like an ordinary baby. I don't know how true that is, but I've heard that when he cried, it sounded like a donkey braying, or something like a donkey braying. So at that time when he was crying like that, Vidura also advised Dhritarashtra, said, kill this child, And what had happened was, when the child was born, Dhritarashtra immediately carried the child and embraced it. So when he felt his child in his arms, he became so happy to have the child. He became very attached to the son, Duryodhana. So then when he cried like a donkey, right, making the sound of a donkey, Vidura said to him, you have to kill, because it's a bad omen. A child shouldn't be crying like that. And then he said, you have to kill it. And then he said, if you don't, your whole family will be ruined. And so we will see that, how because of so much attachment of a father for his son, the entire family of Dhritarashtra, every 100 sons, maybe 99, but all the sons are killed. All of them are killed in the battle of Kurukshetra. None of them survived. So we can understand this, that when there is good advice given by people who are our well-wishers, people who are Krishna conscious, people who will help us understand the philosophies of religious principles and so on, we should take that up. We should not have this concept that I know best. Oftentimes, when people give us good advice and we do not like it, the response is, oh, okay, thank you, but let me think about it. But actually, the whole idea of let me think about it means I'm not interested in your advice. I'm not interested in your guidance. So we should be very careful when we approach good devotees for advice. In our hearts, we should also purify ourselves sufficiently to take the advice that the devotee is giving. As far as possible, we should try to follow those instructions, because it will benefit us and it will benefit those who are looking up to us also. So good advice must be followed properly. Otherwise, no point asking devotees for advice. Oftentimes we find devotees will ask everyone, "Hey, what do you think? What do you think?" 10, 20 people, and then they don't even follow anyone. And so that is not good, that is not good for you, not good for the other devotees also. So everyone is thinking, I gave him good advice, and then they find that they don't even follow. The next time you ask advice, they are reluctant to give advice, because it's a waste of time, of wasting their time, wasting your time. But there are people who like to ask 100 people just so that they can say, I asked so many devotees. But they are actually not willing to follow. I remember one devotee, I'll tell you this, there was a devotee, his mother was having stomach cancer. So she went to the doctors, and then the doctors did some tests, and they say it's confirmed. And then they told her, you should stop eating certain items. And then they say you should not eat all these things because it'll aggravate and make it worse. And one of the items was she should not eat meat, red meat. So she was told not to eat. So then she came home and she told the son, these doctors don't know what they're saying. They're asking me not to eat meat. This doctor doesn't know what he's doing. And so she went to another doctor. And sure enough, the other doctor also said, no, you should not supposed to eat because you have this bad cancer in your stomach. And you're supposed to eat simple food, and vegetarian food is good for you. And she quit that doctor also. Then she went to a third doctor, a fourth doctor. And finally, after some time, she met a doctor who said, you can eat anything you want, we will give you the medicine. So then she came home and she told her devotee son, look, I found this a doctor, he's the right doctor. So the point is, we are not willing to listen to good advice. We only want to listen to what our mind is telling us. So just like here, you can see Dhritarashtra, even though Vidura is giving him good advice, he is so reluctant to take the right course of action. And when later on in a few more verses, you see Duryodhana will get angry with Vidura and shouts at him, and Dhritarashtra will just keep quiet. Because his desire is he wants the kingdom for him and for his sons. And therefore, a very important point we all should consider is if we have a desire, and if Krishna consciousness is going against that particular desire, what is our choice? So it is something all of us should think about. What do we want? Krishna, or we want Maya? That's what it is. What do you want? Is your desire better or Krishna's desire better? You can see in the Bhagavad Gita, in the beginning, Arjuna had his own desires. He wanted to save his family members from the death of the Kurukshetra battle. But towards the end, he realized that it is not possible. And he also realized what the goal of life is that we should do activities that please the Supreme Lord. Activities that are in line with religious principles. Activities that we can say are dharmic. So we have to understand like this. And based on that, then we should make a choice. So if 10 devotees tell you 10 things that are the same or slightly different, then you should consider how to use that advice properly. But if 10 devotees give you 10 different advice, then you are in a difficult situation. Yeah. So then you should approach one who is elevated, more advanced, and they are your well-wisher, and they can really guide you properly. So every devotee should have some Siksha gurus who are their well-wishers and who can give you good advice, that when we take such advice, that we find that all our activities become favorable for executing Krishna consciousness. So that's how it should be. Obviously, in your family, if you have one or two people, your son or daughter who's not interested in Krishna consciousness, you can do your best. You can tell them about Krishna. You can give them prasad. But apart from that, you cannot force anyone to be Krishna conscious. You have to accept that. You do your best to give them Krishna. If they cannot, then you turn to Krishna and say, I tried my best. I tried my best, Lord. Forgive me if I didn't make this child into a devotee, but I tried, and you must be sincere in your attempt to give Krishna to that child. But if you don't try it, maybe a parent cannot tell a child. Maybe the child's friends can tell the child. So then you can connect them in that way. But after doing everything possible in your powers, and still the child is not Krishna conscious, then you have to accept that. That in this life, this is my this is my problem that I have to go through. And not think that the child is always right, because many parents think that their child or their children or they never make mistakes. I remember also one time one of the devotee kid was doing wrong things, so another devotee highlighted, your child is doing this, it's wrong, and they argue with the other person. You do not know my child as well as I know. So this is exactly like the Dhritarashtra, because there's so much affection and attachment that you cannot see the problems with your own child. So therefore, if you are not so attached, then you can be objective in looking at your child, and then you can also make the right choices for that child. But if you're too attached, then you cannot help the child for the right purpose. So, yeah, even though Vidura rightly advised his brother to get rid of Duryodhana, Dhritarashtra could not do it because of too much attachment, and also because he had a false desire to take over the kingdom. His own desires were also not in line with Krishna's desire. Okay, so with that, I will stop. If there are any comments or questions, please feel free to do so.
Devotees, please unmute and ask questions or pass on the comments.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Very nice class, Prabhuji. One question, Prabhuji. I like the point that we are trying to give Krishna conscious to our son or daughter, or in my case, the brothers. If they are not taking it, the affection level itself changes. The affection what I had towards them, it's changed slightly. Is it a right feeling or wrong one?
Okay, the reason why your affection changes is because we have a fruitive mentality. I am giving them something, and therefore I am expecting something, right? So as a devotee, you cannot expect any results, right? You give your best, and you're their well-wisher. You're not their enemy. So even if they don't take it up, that's okay. You're still their well-wisher. You can pray for them. But if they are inimical towards you, then you can take the necessary steps to move away from them. And therefore your affection can change in that way. But if they are still the same personalities, but they don't want to be Krishna conscious, then you shouldn't get angry with them, because you are attached to the results now. Yeah, so our purpose is not to be attached to the results. Our purpose is to help people understand what they are missing out in their journey in Krishna, in their life's journey. That there is a higher purpose in life also. And if they don't want to take it up, then you do your best to tell them why it's important. And after everything's said and done, and still they are not interested, then you should not get angry with them. You should understand maybe in this life they cannot take it up. And you pray for them, be their well-wisher. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
Radha Vinod Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dhanavad Prabhuji, Srila Prabhupada.
Can you
Wonderful.
turn on your camera?
Sure, Prabhuji.
You like to see your handsome face.
Hare Krishna, Jai Puja.
Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Prabhuji, nice lecture, wonderful class. I have one question, Prabhuji, on Vidura's advice. When Duryodhana is born and he was crying as like with a donkey's voice, and he has given advice as to kill him, right? Is this the right advice? I mean, like killing the, first of all, like the child, right? It's a like just born, and also it's a father killing the child is like, it's not like right thing.
Yeah, in general, you can say, yeah. The problem now is we are looking from the present context of world situation, lifestyles in modern society, so-called modern society. And so we are using those rules and we are judging something that is happening 5,000 years ago. In those days, these people are very qualified. And when they see something is very wrong, in this case, this child is going to cause terrible destruction and problems to the entire society. Just like if you know your son is going to be the future Hitler, will you let him continue to grow? That's exactly what it is, Do you understand? Hitler killed.
For the religion, so I mean, I'm not asking just in kind of the morality, but in terms of religion also and dharma also, is it okay?
Yeah,
to
in
kill?
terms of dharma also, when that child is demoniac or cannot do anything properly, the kings would get rid of them. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, but nowadays we can't do that. If you do that, you'll be put to prison. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
so in Kali Yuga, you can't do that. But in the previous ages, yes, it's acceptable. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. Yes, Satya Rupa Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Prabhu, I'm the previous question. I'm just thinking, he is not only the son of Dhritarashtra, but he is going to be a king of the kingdom. That's why they might advise it. If it is a normal people, they might ignored forever.
It's a possibility, but I doubt it. It depends on the age and time, different contexts. If you're looking at Dwapara Yuga and Kali Yuga, maybe in Kali Yuga, people take it, they think it's okay, it's acceptable, A person, in Kali Yuga, the problem is you can do anything wrong and it's okay. Nobody has a standard anymore, right? What's the standard nowadays? So that's what you're seeing. But in the previous Yuga, they knew the standard. Therefore, everyone followed the standard. So therefore, the punishment or the cure for that kind of evil, they can identify what is evil and they will try to stop that evil. Yeah.
Okay. So one more question is, if the sons are mandatory to get rid of that from the hell, or everyone can do their own bhakti so that we can avoid the hell?
Yeah, ideally, if everyone is Krishna consciousness, then they can purify themselves. And then you don't have to worry about. But in general, mostly in the previous yugas and so on, the parents are hoping, because they like to go to heavenly planets to enjoy and so on, Pitri Loka, this Loka, that Loka. So they are hoping that if they made some mistakes, the sons will help them by doing this pinda and all those things. So generally, when you do pinda and so on, the benefit goes to the forefathers. And so they live happily in the heavenly planets. As soon as the descendants stop doing pinda, then the forefathers suffer in those planetary system. So when they suffer, they curse their descendants. They say, yeah, exactly. So therefore, why we want to do all this? Best is to become a devotee and then please Krishna. It's like if you pour the water on the root of the tree, everything is satisfied. So by pleasing Krishna, all those sinful activities, everything is purified for generations of family members. Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Yeah. Anyone else? Right?
Okay, Prabhu, just to give a short thank you note.
No problem.
Yeah, thank you very much for a wonderful class, Prabhu. You made a very great, a lot of great points, but a couple of points that we may have our desires, but ultimately we have to see what is Krishna's desire. And that's very important. Will this activity please Krishna or not? And that should be the prominent thinking. You also highlighted the significance of getting good counsel from a bona fide devotee. We should not ask 10 people for advice and wait until we hear what we want to hear from one of them. No use to ask for advice when the heart is not open to do the right thing. It was a beautiful class, and thank you very much once again, Prabhu. Hare Krishna devotees will express our gratitude to Radha Krishna Prabhu by loudly chanting Hare Krishna mantra one time together. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Krishna Krishna Hare Hare
Rama Rama
Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare.
His Grace Radha Krishna Prabhu ki.
Jai.
Thank you all for joining. So we'll see you all in the evening. The class is at 7 p.m. The temple. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare
Prabhupada
Thank
ki
you.
jai.
Jai.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.